Hi everyone, it's Stephen here. I'm going to explain how to buy an investment property in America as a foreigner, what you need to have in place to make it easy, and whether you should be buying it in your own name or as a company. Plus, I'll cover the group of advisors that you'll need to help you buy property and build your own property portfolio in America. I bought and sold residential and commercial property in the US as a foreigner over the last 9 years. And the aim of this video is to show you how to buy property in the US as a foreigner, to stay compliant and avoid additional aggravation. So you don't need any permission to buy property in the US as a foreigner, and there's no stamp duty to be paid on any property transactions, unlike we have in the UK. Transactions take weeks, not months, unlike they do in the UK, and a typical transaction will take just 30 days. You can submit a different time frame at the point of offer, and we'll talk about how to do that later in the video. There's a few things that you need to have in place before you buy an investment property in the US. These are an individual tax identification number, which is called an ITIN, a decision about whether you're going to be buying in your own name or as a business, so you need to decide that, and also a US bank account, because you're going to be needing to transfer money for your property transactions, and having a local US bank account is just going to make everything easier for the rent to be paid into a local account as well, and do all of your accounting in the US. And we'll talk to about the types of people you need to help you manage your accounting and stuff like that later in this video as well. I'll go over why you need each of these now, and then I'm going to cover in more detail the buying process in the US and also the local US team that you'll need to help make owning property in the US easy. So you're going to need an individual tax identification number, which is called an ITIN for short, and you need this to stay compliant for tax purposes. Once you start generating an income from an investment property, you're going to be generating rent. And therefore, you need to submit your taxes every year to stay compliant with the IRS. So you can get the form from the IRS website. The form is called W7. You can download that, fill it in, send off a copy of your certified copy of your passport with the form to the IRS. And it's going to take quite a while to do. Their processing times at the moment are about 3 months. So the format of the ITIN is exactly the same as the social security number that are issued to residents of the US. Doesn't give you residency or anything like that. It's just literally for tax compliancy. You do not need an ITIN to buy property though. It's just for tax compliance purposes. So I would get one done because we're going to need it for when we're talking about the US bank account in a second and why you need one for that. If you need help to fill out the form, I would go to a US accountant and they can help you fill out the form and even submit it for you. You can even do it with something called an accepting agent, and these are located in all the countries over the world. So you just go to the IRS website, look for an accepting agent in your country, and then you can contact one of those and they'll help you submit the form, charge you a small fee for doing it, and then it will be on its way, and the IRS will take however long they take before you get back your ITIN. As America is a litigious society, it's a good idea to buy investment property in a company name rather than your own name. If you're buying a home just for yourself, or you're buying a second home, a holiday home over there, and you're not going to be renting it out, then maybe it's okay to buy it in your own name. As an investment property, I'd always be buying investment properties in a company name. For me, I set up an LLC, which stands for a limited liability company, and it works exactly the same way as a limited company does in the UK. So you've got managing members in an LLC, just like you have directors, shareholders in a limited company in the UK. It's quite easy to set up. What I did was I used a US attorney to do this for me, but there's also places online like LegalZoom that offer this service, and you can do it all online and pay them a small fee plus filing fees to get that done for you. The cost with doing it via a US attorney is around $350 up to $1,000, depending which state, plus there's filing fees. You'll also need to apply for an EIN. Now, an EIN is associated with your business. EIN stands for Employee Identification Number. It's a bit confusing why they call it employee, but essentially it's just your business number that we would call it in the UK, a company number. You can also apply for an EIN through LegalZoom. I did mine via my US attorney, but you can use an accountant or an attorney to do it for you. To apply for the EIN yourself, you need Form SS4, which can be downloaded from the IRS website. You can apply for an EIN online, but you kind of need an ITIN to be able to do it, and it needs to be a certain type of ITIN, probably one that's a local resident ITIN, not one that's a foreigner ITIN. And that's why you kind of need a US attorney or a US accountant to help you do it if you were to do it even online. It's quite important to set up a US bank account. Now, to do this remotely is pretty difficult these days. Back when I started, I was able to do it all remotely, set it all up via the property manager that I was using. They had some connections into the bank. It's pretty easy. But these days, the banks have tightened up security a lot more, and opening lots of bank accounts as being a big issue in the US. The best way to open a bank account is to actually go to the US and open a bank account. And I'd recommend when you're doing your due diligence on your property and organizing a property manager, that's when you open a US bank account at the same time. You'll also have your passport and things like that to be able to open a bank account pretty easy. But to open a bank account, you have to have your EIN, your Employee Identification Number, for your business. It will help to have the ITIN available when you want to use additional features with the banks, when you want to do direct transfers, which are called ACH transfers in the US, and also wire transfers. Now, a service that I use to transfer money from, say, the UK to the US is a service called OFX. They're a money transfer service, and they give you better rates than the bank. I've got no affiliation with them or anything like that. It's just a service that I use that I'm happy to recommend, as I think it's a pretty good service. They make their money just on the exchange of the currency fluctuations. You can just register on their website, and if you ever need help, you can just call them up on the phone and they'll walk you through stuff and help you with your first deals and things like that. It's very easy to use, just like you would your normal online banking in the UK. Money from OFX then will typically arrive within 24 to 48 hours, and this is really handy for getting stuff from your local account into your US bank account for any property transactions that you want to do. So let's now cover the buying process. Offers are typically made via a realtor who will be acting for you as the buyer. There'll be a realtor acting for the seller, and the two of these people will negotiate just like they do on $1 Million Listing LA.
You're an idiot.
You can pick any realtor you want to act for you in your transactions, and the best way to do this is simply go onto a website like realtor.com, and you can go and find different realtors in the specific area that you're interested in buying. So it's important that you pick a realtor that actually knows the area. Don't pick a realtor that's just in the state. You want one that's narrowed down to the specific zip codes that you're looking to buy property in. Once you've reached out to a realtor and you give them your property requirements, they'll then start sending you information of properties that are available for sale in those areas. And this will be like a link to a portal that's a subset of the MLS that the broker will create specifically for you. To buy a property, you put something down called earnest money. Now, earnest money is just a small amount of money. It's like, say, the 10% deposit, but in reality, I've only ever put down like $1,000. It can be whatever amount of money that you want to put down to buy a property, even as small as $500 if you wanted. But I've always put down $1,000 when it comes to residential property. And this amount is then taken off the balance when it comes to closing on that property when you're buying the property. It's a show of good faith that you're going to be buying the property while you organise your inspections and organise the balance of the money. The earnest money check you'll need to send to the title company, and the instructions of this are typically given to you when the offer's been accepted by the seller. So the realtor will send it to your realtor, who will then pass that to you. And then you'll organise via the bank the earnest money check to be sent to the title company based on the instructions that they send you via email typically. Now, title companies are what the US use to complete all property transactions, and they're quite cheap really when you compare to, say, a US attorney. A US attorney would be equivalent to, in the UK, like a solicitor. A title company is an anomaly that we don't have in the UK. You can use the same title company that the seller has already got engaged to complete on the property transaction. Or if you're not 100% sure it's your first time, you may want to go with an actual attorney, which is what I did on my first few transactions, especially on my commercial ones, where I was using seller finance and things like that. It's entirely up to you. To keep costs low, go with a title company. You can use the same one as the sellers or ask the realtor to recommend one for you. They'll know of title companies because they're dealing with them all the time. There might be some paperwork to do with your transaction that you need to get signed by a US notary. To get a US notary, you can just kind of Google US notary in the country that you're in. They'll charge you a small fee to witness your signature and check your passport, and then to stamp that particular document to say that it's all good, that you've actually signed it. It's normally on a deed of trust when you're doing something like owner or seller finance or taking some kind of mortgage out. If you're buying all cash property, you probably won't need a US notary to sign anything. You can sign all the documents yourself and just email a scanned copy back via the title company or your US attorney, and it's quite straightforward. When you're making an offer, you'll agree an inspection period, which is essentially your due diligence period. During that time, you'll have the property inspected. Now, you can use the realtor to do that, or your property manager, or an independent property inspector. It's up to you what you do during that inspection due diligence period on that property. But you dictate at the point of offer how long that inspection period will be. Typically, it's like 10 days. You can make it longer, it depends on the complexity of the property, how big it is. If it's commercial rather than residential, you might want a longer time. You'd also need to put forward a closing date when the property is going to close, which we call settlement in the UK. And that's typically just an arbitrary number of days from the point of the offer is signed. Like I said earlier, you'd put down as an example 30 days close. So that means from the point that offer's accepted, you've got 30 days until you close the transaction on that property, and the property then becomes yours. A typical offer would be structured something like this, and it can be done just via email to your realtor to present to the other realtors on the seller side. So you'd say $100,000 cash, 10 days inspection, 30 days close, $1,000 escrow. Now, what this means is that you're going to be buying the property for $100,000 all cash. There's no mortgage or financing. You're going to be taking 10 days for your inspection period, and you're going to close 30 days after the offer's been accepted, and you'll be putting down $1,000 as escrow, which means that's your $1,000 earnest money check that gets sent to the title company. As you progress through the transaction, you'll be presented with a HUD statement. Now, this comes typically from the title company on the seller side via whoever's representing you. And in that HUD statement is all the details of the transaction. So what the agreed price with, any other fees that you might have to pay. So there might be pro rata costs for things like property taxes, any other dues that have been paid for on the property that you're liable for, like HOA fees or something like that. There'll also be costs, itemized costs on there for like your attorney or the title work, recording the mortgage if you've got one. And then on there, there'll be a balance of how much money you need to get to the title company to close on that transaction. And that's the amount that you need to get there before the date that you've agreed to close. The process goes super quick, and that's why you can buy property within 30 days or even less. It totally depends what you put forward, and they'll just make things happen. It's so smooth, it's so simple, it's easy, it's very straightforward. It's what every transaction should be on property around the world, in my view. To buy property in the US and eventually build your own property portfolio, you're going to need a team of advisors in the US. Money follows management, and having a good team in the US is as important as buying the right type of property. This team is going to be your eyes and ears on the ground, and they'll help you adhere to any legal obligations and compliance requirements. And this team's typically going to be made up of an accountant, which is going to help you make sure that you're compliant with all tax forms and submitting taxes on time. Your attorney, which is going to help you set up any LLCs or any business entities that you want to set up, your EIN. It's going to be your property manager, which is going to help manage your properties for you. They're going to be checking tenants and organising leases and organising any rehab on the property, which is refurbishment as we call it in the UK. You're going to need a realtor, and your realtor's going to be the one that you trust to submit your property deals for you, and they'll probably go and do the first inspections on properties for you, bring back pictures and videos, and be your main communication about what strategy you're trying to do with your properties and where you want to buy, and they'll give you back information as quickly as possible, especially when they understand that you're serious and that you're a real buyer. You're also going to need an insurance agent, because all your properties you want to get insured, because you don't want to take any risk with property. If you're going to be a property investor, you want to be making sure you get insurance on your properties just in case. But how do you find the right people in the US to be part of your team? So that's why you need to watch this video next, where I'll explain how to find and build a reliable US team as a foreign investor that will make owning property in the US as simple as it is in your own country. Thanks very much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.